John Scott here with Jonathan Acosta as the Bills gearing up to host the Patriots on Sunday Night Football, a game, of course, you will see right here on Channel 2. We'll begin with injuries because encouraging news on that front here. The three guys who all missed the Saints game back on the field in a limited capacity, and you kind of focused more on Spencer Brown. I saw more of Matt Milano, and we know Ed Oliver was out there as well.
That's right, so I can talk about Spencer Brown. He was someone who actually practiced Friday in a limited capacity in that final stadium they do in the practice before the game. They held him out against the Saints. We saw Ryan Vandermark come in against the Saints, and he had some good moments. He also had some not so great moments, so I think this is a team that would love to get Spencer Brown back, especially going up against a Patriots defensive line that is pretty formidable, right? The Patriots defense, a solid unit under their new head coach, Mike Vrabel. So I think he's a guy that this Bills team may be holding him out in a precautionary sense against the Saints, trying to get him healthy for this game. Didn't look limited in his movement at all out there. Limited in practice, but he's someone that I would expect to maybe see ramp up over the course of the week.
And I spoke with him briefly after practice, and he said, Cap's doing good. We're going to keep, working towards getting back on the field here. But he didn't seem all that uncertain about his status for Sunday night. And with Milano, we didn't speak to him, shockingly enough, but did hear from Ed Oliver. He wanted to clarify things because I actually laughed at this.
Why does he want to clarify them?
He wants to clarify what actually happened to him as well with his injury. The team said that he got stepped on during practice. There were some people out there that questioned that. He flat out said, I heard that I fell off a horse or something like that, and wanted to clarify, no, I actually did get stepped on. So here he is, seemingly on the track to maybe return here for the Patriots game on Sunday night. And as you mentioned with Spencer Brown and his replacement, Ryan Vandermark, we've seen some of the issues, gap integrity, run defense with Oliver outside the mix. And I would add even Milano into that as well. Nothing against Dorian Williams or anyone who has been replacing these guys. But, when you get the top dogs in there, for a defense that certainly has questions and issues, that will only help them.
What's the spine of the defense too, right? So the only thing that would be missing would be to be missing one of the safeties, and you'd be missing someone at every level of that spine of the defense, from safety, linebacker, and defensive line. Doesn't help that obviously Ed Oliver and Matt Milano, regardless of where on the defense they are, they're two of the best players on that side of the ball. And so when you're looking at yourself as one of the worst teams in the first 4 weeks against the run, getting those two pieces back is huge. Even if you're playing a Patriots team that their strength on offense is not necessarily running the ball, just having a guy like Ed Oliver to maybe create interior pressure, or Matt Milano to be able to spy a guy like Drake May who is able to get outside the pocket and create plays on the run. Having those two pieces back would be very valuable.
Dorian Williams not practicing, dealing with a knee injury. Jackson Hall is popping up surprisingly limited as well on practice on Wednesday. You talk about the Patriots maybe not run first. They have a trio of backs. We'll get to that. Drake May can throw the football, and his new top target, especially ascending into that this past week, is Stefon Diggs. And it's the first time he will be playing as an opponent inside Highmark Stadium. What do you believe the reaction is going to be?
I think there's going to be a lot of boos for Stefon Diggs, and I think it's mostly because of the way things ended, right? I think it would have been one thing if this Bills team, it played its course, he got to the end of his contract, and then he just left in free agency, and there was sort of a mutual parting of ways. There was a mutual parting of ways, but it was a trade, right, where it sort of felt like Diggs has sort of worn out his welcome, and there was sort of, I don't know what the word for it is, but there's sort of that weird feeling sort of leading up to that Texans game, and there was a lot made of the maybe short handshake and interaction he had with Josh Allen after that game, post-game on the field when the Texans win that game. So I sense that even though Diggs did a lot of good things in Buffalo and had a lot of dynamic years playing with Josh Allen, it's always the most recent things that stick out in people's heads. So I think his reception might not be very warm when he gets here to Orchard Park and runs out on the field at Highmark Stadium. But knowing Stefon Diggs, I'm sure that someday it might actually juice him up a little bit more for this game.
If people are starting to give it to him in a negative way with jarring him and ribbing him and things like that, I think that it will amplify him. And the Bills players, some of his former teammates, they said, yeah, he's going to come in with some extra juice. What will be interesting to me, though, even at road games, Diggs does his routine of playing catch with fans in the stands. It was something that really endeared him to members of Bills Mafia, young kids in particular. I'll be curious if he brings that back here, and he wouldn't do it simply because he's trying to maybe, lower the intensity here. I just think that's naturally who he is. I think the dynamic of Stefon Diggs is just so interesting. We could spend an entire 20 minutes on kind of both sides of the coin here, but people did love him. He loved being here, and I think from the angle of the teammates side of things, the Texans game, I think, really closed and turned the page here on that side of things. And I wonder if it also maybe did for some of the fan base. All right, we kind of got the first time around. Yeah, you were right in the thick of it with the Allen Diggs, whatever you want to call the interaction. And I feel like maybe now where the Bills are, where Diggs is coming off the knee injury, maybe it's going to be less than what we think.
The interesting part of this is you bring up the knee injury and where Diggs is in that sort of recovery, because I think maybe all of this would be toned down a little bit more if Diggs was not as far along in his recovery and we maybe didn't expect to see him play a big role in this game. Then it'd be more of like an ancillary point in this game, but nothing that impacts the overall game. Diggs has a chance to impact this game. He's coming off his first 100-yard game as a New England Patriot, playing with a quarterback like Drake May, who I think leads the league in completion percentage, right? So here's a quarterback who's playing at a very high level. They bring in Diggs to sort of be that alpha in the wide receiver room, and last week is the first time that we really get to see him in that sort of role. We saw him sort of have a good game against Buffalo last year and against Houston. So if Diggs is having a good game against the Bills this time around, you wonder what role the crowd and all of that plays, and the animosity and just all of sort of everything else that revolves around the game other than what's actually going on the field.
What's interesting, through 3-4 games here with Diggs, he's only playing 50+% of the snaps for New England. I think it's going to continue to gradually grow as he gets more comfortable, as the knee gets stronger, gets more incorporated here. So he's not like a primetime fixture, even though, as you said, this past weekend, he was the primetime producer here. They have a trio of backs. One, Travion Henderson, is a rookie that I know you and I both big fans of. But he's in a true committee here with Ramondre Stevenson, Antonio Gibson. There's been some fumbling issues here, and we know the Bills' run defense has been the glaring hole on that side of the ball. How do you feel maybe those two sides will go up against each other?
I think it's always an emphasis for the Bills in practices creating those turnovers, right? And I think when you're in those defensive meetings, when they're analyzing the game of Ramondre Stevenson, I think it's going to be a message amongst those coaches. Hey, this is a guy who puts the ball on the ground. Punch that ball out. Because Stevenson, if I remember correctly, was benched last year by that staff, either then or even by Bill Belichick, for his fumbling issues, right? So this could be a situation where maybe he's on a sort of situation where you put the ball on the ground one more time, it's Antonio Gibson and Travion Henderson time. You see the juice that Henderson has as a rookie, especially in the passing game and everything. Antonio Gibson, not just as a running back, but also as a return guy. He had a kickoff return for a touchdown against Miami. And it's that special teams thing that even Sean McDermott was asked about. This is a Patriots team that already has 2 return touchdowns on the year, one against Miami in the kickoff game, one in the punt game against Carolina. And so he knows, and he talked about how this team has to be aware of sort of the juice that the Patriots have in that aspect of the game, because as we've seen across the NFL, special teams, whether it be blocked kicks or returns, playing a big factor in who wins and loses games 4 weeks through the season.
And part of the run defense dynamic for the Bills and their defensive issues has also been mobile quarterbacks, and Drake May is certainly one of those guys. Containing him is something that they're going to have to do. One thing I'll point out from just watching practice here on Wednesday, tackling has been bad. They were focusing on tackling on that defensive side of things. I saw it with the linebackers. I saw it with the defensive backs. You know what happens with the defensive linemen as well here. So Sean McDermott saying immediately after the game, saying it on Monday as well, fundamentally they need to maybe go back to the drawing board and really emphasize tackling at a basic level. I saw that here. On the other side of things, Bills have been leaning into James Cook as the focal point of their offensive game plan here. Patriots coming in with the best run defense in football.
That's right, and that's where the ability, maybe not ability, but the way this team is using James Cook in more of that true third down style, not just on first and second down and bringing Ty Johnson in on third down, but truly first, second, third down. Do we maybe see a little bit more of James Cook, the receiving back? Because let's remember when he was drafted, that's what he was coming out of Georgia, right? He was mainly the receiving back, and then as he's been here in Buffalo, he's sort of developed into one of the better runners of the football in the NFL. So here's where that ability of James Cook to stay on the field all 3 downs might really start to play a factor. And to be fair, the Patriots have the #1 run defense, or the second-ranked run defense. They haven't played a rushing attack like this Bills offense, right? So we've seen this Bills offense really be able to run the football even dating back to last year, when they commit to running the football, they're almost able to run the football on almost anyone. So it'll be fascinating to watch how and if they're able to do that against a Patriots team that within the division, these division games are always a little bit wonky, right? The Jets, the Dolphins, the Patriots, you throw the records out the windows because they know each other so well. It's even something that Josh Allen alluded to when he was talking today after practice. So first, in terms of running the ball for the Bills, second against the run in terms of the Patriots, you can almost throw those numbers outside because once the game gets going, every game sort of takes its own flow, and so I'm sure this game will happen the same.
Our first taste of what New England looks like under Mike Vrabel. Connor McGovern with a really interesting nugget. I asked, how is the defense, maybe personnel might be some of the same guys that we've seen in years past, but how is Mike Vrabel's scheme and the way they do things defensively differ from maybe previous years? He said, especially under Belichick, they're all about disguising and movement and changing things at the line and constant communication, Josh and Connor, about what is actually coming their way defensively. He says with Vrabel, they set it, you may know what's coming, and they just think that they're going to out-execute you. So it's maybe not as much of a cat and mouse game under Mike Vrabel and what the Bills' offense will have to try to figure out is coming their way. It's just man on man, can we stop what they're trying to do to us?
And a good nugget on that is I talked with David Edwards today for something you'll be able to watch in our pregame Sunday Night Football special, and he was talking about how this Bills O-line, they have their preparation during the week, but that they do a very good job, and a lot of credit to Aaron Kromer on how specific they get for the team that they're playing against also that specific week, whether it be combination blocks or stuff like that. And I saw even some player-to-player coaching on the field today from David Edwards to Osiris Torrance after a specific rep on, hey, like, you're trying to do this and not this and stuff like that. And then I watched Torrance go in and do it and then go back to Kromer and Edwards and go like this. So that sort of gives you a glimpse into, hey, O-line maybe sometimes seems simple, hey, go out and block your guy, but there's so many intricacies that goes into that. So I think it's interesting that you bring up that McGovern point, because this Edwards point that he was talking to me about plays into that. And it's also a Patriots defense that, yeah, you're familiar with them in terms of them being a divisional opponent, but they added a lot of new bodies to that side of the ball in the offseason, right? The Patriots had a lot of cap space to play with in free agency and made the most of it. They went and got Milton Williams from Philadelphia. They went and got Carlton Davis, Harold Landry. So Josh Allen both brought up those new pieces on defense, plus their big physical corners. He said Christian Gonzalez, in his opinion, is one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, right? So this is a Patriots defense that we've seen the Bills go up against them and maybe go up against sort of anemic offenses, and that's put the defense in a bad spot. This year, that defense being able to flourish a little bit better because the offense is carrying more of its weight that it should be.
Nike rivalry jerseys on display Sunday night. I find it ironic that it's supposed to be like this cold, snowy type of a theme, and it's going to be 80 degrees during the tailgates. What are your thoughts? We just saw the helmets out on practice today.
I thought they looked really good. I think it's one of those things where you see the uniforms sort of in pictures, on social media and stuff like that, and then once you see it in person and in the game setting, it looks so much better. And I think we got to see it here under, like, with the sunlight and everything. I think it'll look a lot better. Prime time, stadium lights on, in the sort of national TV audience type setting against the Patriots on Sunday Night Football. I'm excited to see those uniforms because I think they're really cool. And you bring up a funny point, but the other side of that is, well, if they did play in a snowstorm, then it's a disadvantage because you're trying to find who your teammates are in the snow. So it makes more sense to actually use these uniforms in a setting like this one.
And no one is complaining that it'll be in the 60s at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night in early October for a Bills home football game. As you said, we'll have coverage leading into it. Sports Talk Live Plus on Thursday with Vic Carucci and myself. Sports Talk Live on Channel 2 will be at 6:30 to 7 leading into Sunday Night Football. So much more to discuss as we inch ever so closely to kick off between the Bills and Patriots, 8:20 on Sunday night. With Jonathan Acosta, I'm John Scott for Channel 2 Sports.